Alright, our ring design is already looking gorgeous. It's time to get it camera ready. In these lessons, we'll cover everything you need to know about setting up your render, from lighting and camera angles to finalizing your composition. We'll make sure your ring looks amazing, ready to sparkle on screen. Let's bring this design to life. Let's now give our object some nice materials. We will opt for the standard metal material here and some simple background plane. First, select the ring band, go into the material options, and add a new material. Ramp up metallic to 1 and change the color to a nice gold. To see the color, it is best to use the second viewport without overlays and switch to viewport shading, and this will give you a preview of the materials. Now select all the other curves by clicking and shift clicking, and then lastly select the ring band with the material. Now press Ctrl L and say link materials. So if you now change this material, you can change them all in an instant. Then in the unshaded viewport, add a plane with Shift A, scale it up with S, and in front view, move it down with Z so that it becomes a backdrop for our ring to sit on. Give the plane a new material as well. You can call it background or something. So let's now open a third viewport and change to the shader editor. And up here, change to world. And there you should see the background color of our world. And if you want to see the changes you make in here, it is best to switch to the next shading option, the viewport rendered shading. And right now we can't see anything, or not much, but if you change the color, you can make it at least brighter. But much better than the simple color would be a sky texture node. And for this, we can here in the nodes, we can press Shift A and texture and choose a sky texture. And if you select them both with Shift and click, we can press F. And this will illuminate our scene with a nice sky background texture. To see a more intricate version of our rendered view, we can go to Render and we can switch from Eevee to Cycles. And there it looks already much more realistic. You can also turn on GPU compute. You can also go into the material and turn down the roughness a little bit so that it looks really shiny. Remember, you can also go into the preferences under System and switch your Cycles render device on. Now you should have seen the background light up with a nice atmospheric glow. If you switch to perspective view with 5 on the numpad, you will even see the kind of dark bottom of the texture and the nice bright lit sky. So let's go back to orthographic mode. And of course, in the shader, you can increase or decrease the strength, the sun rotation, and even the atmosphere. Also the elevation. You can also switch between different types of sky textures, but I really like the Nishita one. It looks quite realistic. So the background plane, of course, doesn't have to be white. You could also make it very dark, and this will change the whole atmosphere of the scene. You can also make it metallic and decrease the roughness to have kind of a glossy backdrop where the ring is mirrored. You can also lower this further so that the ring has a kind of floating aesthetic compared to like the way that it sits on top of a plane. And so you have many options to play around with the placement and the color of the backdrop. I like this particular scene here just because you can see the shadow, and this just gives it a little bit more of a realistic touch. So I will just leave it at that for now. And of course, you could also, if you, for example, wanted to give one of these ornaments another color, you could click on New Material while having the ornament selected. By the way, you can close this shader window here by right-clicking and Join Areas and then go down. And then you can create a copy of this gold material and call it, I don't know, silver. And then you can make that white. And then you would have another kind of material in here. Or you make both of them white. And this way you have a variation of this design. Pretty neat. And a small tip, if you like to experiment with fancier materials, like you wanted to give this ring a wooden surface as a backdrop or a pillow or something to present your jewelry, you can download the Blender Kit add-on. It's this here. And if you turn that on, you will get a ton of free and paid materials. You will get a little menu up here, and sometimes they will send you advertising. But you can, for example, if you have the plane selected, you could search for wood and you could go to material. And then you could just search for a nice surface that suits your idea of your scene. For example, this one. And let's just bring up the shader window once more. And here you can see this material has been automatically added, and it has all the different textures and alpha maps and all that stuff that you need to create a beautiful material. Up here on the left, you can change the rotation, and that will change the rotation of the texture. And this way you can adjust it even more or change the scale. You can also hold down and move your mouse down, then you can change the whole scale at once so that it looks even more realistic size-wise. So yeah, that would be an option, how you could play with backdrops and materials. And there's also a ton of other stuff in there. For example, if you need a pillow, you can go to material and you can go to pillow, and then you will find a pillow. And some of those are paid, but some of them are free. And well, it's very much worth a try. You can just close this here if you don't need it and close this here. Or if you don't need it altogether, you can deactivate the add-on. It will keep the materials that you added with it in there without having this big kind of menu up here all the time. Yeah, okay, so that's just a little tip for creating nice realistic scenes. Let's go back to the white background just to keep things simple. And I would just switch to the world shader once more here. Here's also an N menu, by the way. And make this a little bit darker, just a little bit. Because now, let's make this a little smaller. Close this back up. You can also hold your mouse pointer here until it becomes a plus and then make it swallow the other viewport. And now the next thing that we can do, we can add 2 or 3 lights to emphasize the highlights on this thing. Let's first make this plane transparent in this viewport so that it does not obstruct our view. For this, we go to Object Properties and Viewport Display and switch this to Wire. And then in the render, it is still visible as before, but here in this viewport, it will just become a square.